A couple of comments about the regulatory compliance issue. Just to give you an idea of, I mean, these are a lot of things scattered across the screen that are subject areas that might interest you. The reason I wanted to focus on the regulatory compliance in the middle on information security is to give you an idea of the depth and scope that may have in your workday. At the University of Washington, for instance, I have a laundry list, binders full of compliance requirements. As a matter of fact, it goes from things you might have heard of like HIPAA compliance, which is all about protection of medical records and associated issues with those, to here at the university we have something called ITAR, which involves international trade regulations out of the State Department for classified technology. The University of Washington does a lot of classified research, for instance. So all the Department of Defense and State Department rules regarding export of technology or information has large sets of compliance requirements that I have to know and understand. So when I go to the Applied Physics Lab here on campus, or I go to the Electrical Engineering Department or other places that do classified research or research that generates results or inventions or intellectual property that may need to be safeguarded for U.S. interests, I have to understand how the security needs to be framed around that information, which is different than the way it's framed around HIPAA, which is different than the way it's framed around GLB, which is different than the way it's framed around state ISB security compliance requirements, which I have to meet. So I bring up all those acronyms, and I bring up the problem to let you realize that if you get involved in the security industry, a big part of the CISO's job is understanding your employer's compliance obligations. And for me, it represents 3 bookshelves worth of stuff that I have to know and understand and be able to navigate officially for the university. So I bring that up only to give you some idea of depth of the things that are listed up there.
Go ahead.
I want to talk about why strategic security. This is sort of an exciting piece that we figured you folks would like to know about a little bit. In the last 5 years, those of us who have had to defend large networks, large enterprises, who have had institutional responsibilities from the strategic level, have come to the realization that the world has changed dramatically when it comes to technology. And the way it's changed is that the bad guys out there in cyberspace, if you look at the cyber world, the bad guys now have the advantage, and they're taking advantage of it. There is a remarkable story to be told out there that isn't easily available to the general population that security professionals are aware of, and that is that the rules of engagement, the nature of technology, the limitations of institutions to defend themselves has caused a very difficult situation to emerge, which requires a new strategic kind of business modeling that you have to do to defend institutions, new risk pictures, excuse me, that we never had to address before. And some of the threats are quite remarkable. How many here have heard of botnets? Raise your hand. Do you know what botnets are? These are robot networks. These robot networks are controlled now not only by script kiddies and people who are interested in disrupting systems to make a name for themselves, which is actually just sort of noise I don't care about. They're now managed by organized cyber gangs and organized cyber crime. It's very sophisticated. And I'll give you an idea how successful these botnet operations and the leveraging of criminal acts through botnet operations are in terms of dollars and cents. The U.S. Treasury Department and the United Nations, several different committees within those 2 institutions, the U.S. Treasury Department and the United Nations, both of them deliver economic news and economic forecasting of revenues in a variety of areas. And if you look at the reports in there and some of the industry reports we get from Forrester Research and Gardner, they predict that in this year, 2006, around the world, all revenue for e-commerce will be about $175 million. $175 billion. Now that's a real startling amount. I'm cynical about that number because I worked to protect a trading floor at Frank Russell that sold share stocks that equaled that more in a day than in an entire year. About $175 billion in revenues for legitimate e-commerce business worldwide this year. There are indications, and we don't know for sure, but there are strong indications that organized crime will make roughly $300 billion off of their electronic enterprises, extortion, and intrusions and data theft and fraud and all the things they do to leverage revenues. They will make more than legitimate businesses. That means that the University of Washington and the Port of Seattle are now deploying our defenses against institutions that have more money, more revenues at stake, more research capability, and extraordinarily well-paid, highly skilled professionals that are interested in defeating our systems. So there's a new strategic security mandate for us to adopt as professional security people. I talked to you about some of the troubling realities. Let me give you some other statistics. This is a really interesting book. I wouldn't read it unless you're well medicated. It's by Martha Stout. She's a very interesting Harvard professor. She's a psychologist. She's really delightful. It's one of these things you should pick up at Borders or whatever when you're drinking coffee and thumb through it quickly. But on the cover it states one of the more interesting facts, that her clinical research, her research has indicated to her that 1 in 25 people in America and likely in the world, 1 in 25 are sociopaths. That means they have no conscience. 1 in 25. Somebody in this room is a sociopath. You, Hayden. Check your wallet.
Kirk, remember this camera makes 10 pounds on it.
That's right. That's right. I told you, a sociopath. 1 in 25. And one of my favorite colleagues in the security industry, Dan Greer, who's just a wonderful philosopher, one of his famous quotes is, "In the world of network computers, every sociopath is your neighbor." So let me translate that for you. On this globe, spinning around, the best information available through the industry is that there's about 1.3, 1.2 billion people on the internet right now with about 800 million computers. 1.2, 1.3 billion people. If this is true, then there's 41 million sociopaths out there on the network cruising around, maybe communicating with you, and conducting their interesting perspectives of technology out there on the internet. That's an interesting statistic. It really brings home the fact that that this is not the internet and the technology you like to dress yourself up with and engage with for convenience may not be as comfortable a piece of accoutrement that you want to have as part of your life. You may want to treat it differently if you understand some of the statistics associated with it. 41 million sociopaths, and the reason I know that most of that there are probably more than that out there is that the internet is perfect for the sociopathic profile. It's perfect for them. It's anonymous. They can manipulate. It's a perfect medium. So at a minimum, there's probably 41 million sociopaths out there. Makes you think, doesn't it?